It is coming up on 5 minutes after 12 on this 21st day of September. In the year 2015, it was in the year 1990 that WHRO-FM came into existence as a full-time public radio station. So at this point, we are 25 years and 5 minutes old. And with me, Dwight Davis, is Raymond Jones. Sherry Barbour has graciously conceded her hour so that we could look back at 25 years and more of great classical radio in Hampton Roads. And no one is better qualified to do that than Raymond Jones, who's been on the air now for 55 years plus.
All the classical stations.
Each and every one in the market.
WRVC, WTGM, WGHFM, WFOS, WHRO-FM, and now WHRJ and WHRF. So, if I keep going at this, one of these days I'm going to get the hang of it.
Get it right.
It's hard to believe 25 years. We were in this very same studio, same room. Most of the people, though, who are we're being remembered today are gone.
Yes, we've lost.
We're sort of the last of the Mohicans.
Yeah, lost some of the great voices and radio personalities in classical music in this market, and we'll talk a little bit more about them. But here is the voice of one of them promoting the launch, as we called it, of the two stations 25 years ago.
A reminder that beginning Friday, September the 21st, exactly at noon, WHRO-FM will be moving to 90.3 on the FM dial. And when we go, we're taking with us some of your old friends. Friends like and, of course, so if you want to hear from your friends again, please come along for the ride. WHRO-FM moves to 90.3, Friday, September the 21st, exactly at noon.
And so we did. The voice of Vianne Webb.
The one and only Vianne, who was sort of our mentor for so many years. Vianne Webb, who was kind of like a big sister to you and me, Dwight, and who passed away in 1992, one of the great losses to classical music. She was the program director of WGHFM for many years and then came over here to WHRO and was the station vice president. And I had the sad task of succeeding her for a number of years. And then when I got finally worn out, you took over as the program director and mentor of music for the younger announcers, and you've been doing it for a lot of years. So we've kept on up the tradition of Vianne, or at least we hope that we have. But it's great to hear that voice again. She was the queen of culture, as we like to say. Of course, we've got a lot of Vianne stories about when she wasn't the queen of culture, when things happened.
There are many.
She was a real down-to-earth person. If you could have seen Vianne in action, there was no other like her. But when she was on the air, she just was the epitome of great classical announcing, and just the most wonderful person to work with you could ever imagine.
And she did love the music, and that's what drove her to assist John Morrison. She and John Morrison did yeoman work in getting these two stations on the air, and it was not an easy process.
Well, I can tell you about.
Raymond knows all about that.
I got involved in it as well. The reason we have the side-by-side frequencies, and it's extremely rare. We had 90.3 with the Chesapeake Public Schools. I had a dual career as broadcaster and as educator, and I was an administrator with the Chesapeake Schools and the communications director there. And we had our radio station, WFOS, on 90.3. Well, we worked out a deal. Portsmouth Public Schools had a station that was going off the air, and they had 88.7. So what we did was we assigned the 90.3 to Hampton Roads Telecommunications, WHRO, took the 88.7 from Portsmouth to Chesapeake. WHRO gave the station in Chesapeake a more powerful transmitter so they could accomplish their purpose of reaching around the city. And then we got the 90.3. We already had the 89.5, so we ended up with the side-by-side frequencies, one full-time classical, one with the news and the other types of musical programming. Extremely rare in the radio industry, and we have held on to it like crazy ever since.
Indeed. And if it sounds like a three-dimensional chess match, it was, because there was enormous amount of paperwork involved. Government paperwork with the FCC.
Figures.
So it took much longer than anyone expected. But the importance of that is that a thorough study was done prior to the attempt to bring on two separate stations, whether or not this area could indeed support two separate stations as one of the lesser markets in the country. And indeed, it turned out that that was the case, that this audience is supportive to the extent that we have two public radio stations independent of each other, but working very closely together. And those two stations have been on the air now for 25 years, and it is quite remarkable, and it's a tribute to this audience.
And some of the people from the past who, supported us, of course, our old boss, Raymond Bottom, who gave the WGH-FM library to WHRO in 1983. It was all LPs then. Mm-hmm. We still have some of those in the back, and once in a while
I have number one in my office.
We'll spend one of those. You got it right on your wall. I know exactly where it is. Dr. Forrest P. Clay, Pat Clay, who helped with the Virginia Cultural Foundation, and who, in fact, the Cultural Foundation still gives money to the station. So our lineage goes way back to the days when Norman Wilcox and Pat Clay and Bill Massey set up WRVC, and then Raymond Bottom helped with WGH-FM. The WGH-AM in those days was the big rocker, and the FM was the classical. Of course, in the 80s, FM suddenly became the dominant radio force, so that forced the sale of the station. And we all remember that sad day back in 1983 when WGH-FM went away. Dwight and I worked together there. In fact, Dwight and I have worked together for 42 years, which is almost unprecedented in broadcasting, and still are going strong. We have very understanding wives, you have to understand.
Yes.
But we go back many years to the WGH-FM days. We saw the audience in shock after the sale. We saw them stay with us, and then we saw them come on strong when we put the two stations on the air. And when people said it will never work, we knew it was going to work because we knew the audience. You who are go back to those days and who are still with us, and even the new members who are still supporting us, you have made it work all these 25 years. So we throw a salute out to you today.
We do indeed. And over on the other side, our sister station, WHRV, a lot of that programming has been on the air now for more than 25 years, though it's changed over the years. We have a little glimpse back into radio history, even before these two stations existed. We thought you might like to hear that. This was prepared for the launch of the two independent stations 25 years ago.
The following program will be interrupted for any important war bulletins. And now, the romance of Helen Trent.
No, don't open that door, McGee.
I love to spend each Sunday with you.
Gracie, this is getting embarrassing.
Only one man should top this list, Charles Boyer.
What's the trouble, Kingsley?
Oh, I don't know, Andy. The phone is messed up or my ears done jammed up on me.
Pepsi Cola hits the spot. 12 full ounces, that's a lot.
The Shadow now.
We're going strong, the all-American boy.
Somebody, I say, somebody now.
Yeah. Jack, how can you be so cheap?
All right, go ahead. Be like the other radio comedians. Tell some cheap jokes.
And I want to help and support of the woman I love.
And the frame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast.
Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
A date which will live in infamy.
A landing was made this morning on the coast of France.
Sign the instrument of surrender at the places indicated.
Since the early 1920s, radio has traveled the better part of this century with us. Through the bittersweet Depression, the grim days of World War II, the seemingly happy days of the 1950s, and the rapid advances and revolution that has followed ever since. Wherever there is one of us with imagination and a desire to learn, radio is usually close at hand.
The Dow dropped 508 points.
The Ginsburg story began to unravel at Harvard, where a half dozen...
Let's produce some rhubarb pie.
Right.
I've had rhubarb pie, yes. I've had it. I haven't had it for a long time.
Has been indicted by a grand jury on charges of drug smuggling, money laundering, and racketeering.
Soldiers are trained to attack enemy armies, not to deal with children throwing stones.
I mean, you look at the sort of red, leafy vegetable, which is mostly poisonous.
Read my lips.
Certainly in the last 2 decades, National Public Radio has led the pack for enlightened minds with programs like All Things Considered, Morning Edition, Weekend Edition, Options in Education, Horizons, Voices in the Wind, and many more. While some of these programs are now history, others, like All Things Considered, are still going strong. In the 90s, we will continue to carry NPR's finest, along with some very appealing new entries.
From WHYY in Philadelphia, I'm Sedge Thompson, and this is Fresh Air.
Summer Lightning by P.G. Wodehouse, adapted in 6 episodes by Richard Osborne, with Richard Vernon as Lord Emsworth and Ian Carmichael as the Honourable Galahad Threepwood.
Coming to you live from a Keckern Auditorium at Seattle's Museum of History and Industry, where we have a lifetime warranty on our quality of life, it's time once again for Sandy Bradley's Potluck!
From National Public Radio, this is Horizons. I'm Berta Mae Grosvenor.
Tell us what's the right way!
In July 1989 in Washington, D.C., Reverend George Stallings, a 41-year-old black Catholic priest, sent shockwaves through the church when he launched an African-American congregation called Imani Temple.
Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. Barbara Jefford reads the first of 17 episodes.
The family of Dashwood had long been settled in Sussex.
He stumbles into a decrepit hovel, ignoring the poor wretches who lay groaning on the straw-covered floor. He staggers in, lets fall his ragged coat, lurches forward and says,
"Welcome to the Goon Show!"
In the last 2 years, WHRO has been intimately involved with a program of our own, a building program. It began in June of 1988 when ground was broken for our new studios. Since then, all kinds of marvels and magic have taken place inside this very building. As you can see, the installation of state-of-the-art equipment for our FM studios is nearing completion. By September the 21st, all will be ready to launch our 2 new public radio stations, WHRO-FM, Fine Arts Radio at 90.3, and WHRV-FM at 89.5 for news, public affairs, and other diverse offerings. These are the radio stations that will be making a difference in the 90s. This launch, however, takes us well beyond the 90s and continues into the uncharted waters of the next century. It is a journey that holds promise and fulfillment. And where else but in public broadcasting can our minds travel to regions and boundaries that other media cannot or will not venture? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Virginia's flagship public broadcasting stations for the 21st century, WHRO-FM and WHRV-FM. A prosperous journey awaits us all.
The voice of Vianne Webb with a piece of radio history put together by our friend Taylor Green, 2 of the stilled voices over this last 25 years, as we begin another 25 years. Dwight Davis and Raymond Jones with you during Sherry Barbour's A Little Something for Everyone. We have a little something for those who remember the radio market as it was many years ago and as it is today.
Yeah, this was from a special that I put together a few years back when we were celebrating one of the radio anniversaries. It was a history of classical music in Hampton Roads radio. We had a chance to get on that wonderful voice of Bill Massey.
But back to WRVC-FM, which later became WTGM-FM, and eventually the present-day WHRO-FM. WRVC stayed on the air till 1970 and was reborn as WTGM-FM in 1973. In the meantime, WGH-FM on the peninsula was taking up the classical torch as well. Two of the most significant personalities in classical radio came from those stations, Bill Massey on WRVC-FM and in later years on WHRO-FM, had a voice made for classical radio, as did WGH-FM's Vian Webb, who would be program director of 97.3 for many years and then returned to guide WHRO-FM to full-time classical programming. A musicologist once stated that only two perfect pieces of classical music had ever been written, Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik and Debussy's Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. Bill Massey was the Mozart, and Vian Webb was the Debussy. When Bill Massey read a commercial, for WRVC-FM was a commercial classical station in those days, as was WGH-FM, he could make the copy sound as if it was the Declaration of Independence.
Exchanging dollars for tires is more than an ordinary business transaction at R&S Tire Company, Colley Avenue at 42nd Street. Putting safety on your car and ease of mind in your driving are their chief objectives. At R&S Tire Company, you're not only a customer, but also a friend. R&S Tire Company, Colley Avenue at 42nd Street. Reliability and service for 15 years.
As for Vian Webb, she could be an angel reading Christmas poetry.
Dearest, it was a night that in its darkness rocked Orion stars. A sighing wind ran faintly white along the willows, and the cedar boughs laid their wide hands in stealthy peace across the starry silence of their antique moss. No sound save rushing air, cold, yet all sweet with spring, and in thy mother's arms, couched weeping there, thou lovely thing.
A commanding presence announcing the classics.
Dame Joan Sutherland with Maurie's Salute to France from Donizetti's The Daughter of the Regiment, a production which was done by the Virginia Opera Association, an opera which was done by them in January of 1979, a production which starred Ashley Putnam as Marie. We've been a couple of hours into our tribute to the Virginia Opera Association tonight, and not once have we heard the voice of Luciano Pavarotti. We're going to do that next with the aria A Mes Amis from Daughter of the Regiment.
And so Luciano sings at full speed. Vian's tape there was running a little
slow. And I'm going to get my tires put on right now, so I'll be back. Bill's talked me into that. 42nd and Colley. I think the tire station is long gone, too.
Bill Massey and Vian Webb, two of the great voices in radio in this area, serving classical music for many, many years.
In fact, when I started at WRVC, I'd been on the air on the Chesapeake station in high school, but my first pro job was at WRVC, and they wouldn't let me on the air at first. I had to play tapes, and then run the music, and the tapes were those of Bill Massey. So in many ways, Bill was my exemplar to follow. He was the voice of classical music for me, and although I'll never match Bill, it was an example certainly to aspire to. And Bill and I became great friends later on, and it was good to have him back here at WHRO in the final years. He had started classical music announcing back in the 1940s, and it was just one of those incredible voices, as was Vian. So with Vian Webb and Bill Massey as teachers, we've gone a long ways, and now we're the old folks now, and the new ones are coming along, and it's fun to hear the different new voices of classical radio. But it is fun as well today to go back 25 years and remember what we were doing in this very room, signing on. John Morrison, of course, we've got to mention John. John was the chief executive officer and president of WHRO, and I think John even pushed in the patch cord to put us on the air, and was such a great supporter of classical music for many years here. So, John, if you're listening today, thank you again. He's one who is still with us and comes by the station every once in a while still to visit, enjoying now his well-deserved retirement.
Thank you very much, John, for your foresight to be able to bring classical music, keep classical music in this market, which is very, very supportive, as we've been saying. Speaking of pushing in the plug there, of course, that's old terminology. Things change fast in this business, and since Raymond and I have been doing this, so much has changed. But what hasn't changed is you and us and the music, and that's what it's all about. That's, as they say, the bottom line. I don't know who. It might have been me. I'll own up to it. Who was actually running the controls on the board, as we say, at the launch, but several people were off mic.
I have photographs, but I'll never tell.
Okay. But we can hear what happened, sort of, and we're going to bring you a little bit of the pre-launch segment that we were recording back prior to 12 noon, 25 years ago today.
Well, that's my favorite. It makes me very happy. Bob Calvert suggested that we follow that with some buckwheat Zydeco. And we don't have time because we have a special presentation for you that Taylor Green did that we want you to hear. So what we invite you to do is to join Bob Calvert this evening at 8 o'clock, and you can have some buckwheat Zydeco and some good jazz and all those surprises that Calvert has in store for you, beginning at 8 o'clock tonight.
It's 10 minutes before 12 noon. At 12 noon, we remind you once again that there will be 2 new public radio stations in Hampton Roads.
You don't guess anything's going to go wrong, do you?
At this point, it's been rolling along very smoothly. I don't think so.
The rockets are lit.
Wait a minute, you're not on. The rockets are lit.
The rockets are lit. We're getting ready for blast off.
That's right.
So are some of the guests.
Yes.
So are some of the guests, Taylor says. We're having a party here as we dedicate our beautiful new building today, a building which was provided by those of you who in the community who support our corporation, WHRO, Hampton Roads Telecommunications Association, public broadcasting for southeastern Virginia and northern North Carolina. We are proud and pleased to say.
And let's not forget you, the radio family who made it all possible. Thank you.
All right, there you are. A very loose collection of folks in this studio.
Yeah, we were pretty loose.
Celebrating. Yes, that's what I mean. Vian Webb with Taylor Green and Raymond and myself. Raleigh Bristol was sitting out that day, but Vian mentioned Bob Calvert. Bob Calvert, one of the radio legends of Hampton Roads, worked here briefly, as did Raleigh Bristol for quite a number of years. Others whom we have lost: Tim Morton, Edgar Lacine, our critic, Bill Hickok, who inaugurated the guitar program here on WHRO-FM, Carol Taylor, who hosted and initiated defenestration on our sister station, WHRV, and our radio engineer, Herman Wood, Betty Luce, a producer of programs on both stations. Those folks we have lost, those folks did a lot to make these two stations the successes that they are, and their influence still being felt, and we will miss them.
Herman Wood, our radio engineer. I remember us doing a remote one time from, it must have been, I guess, Christ in St. Luke's.
It was Christ in St. Luke's,
yeah. We had to go up on the roof of Eastern Virginia Medical School to set up a microwave link back to the station. So after the broadcast, somewhere around midnight, we were on the roof of EVMS with strange fumes coming out of the ventilation system. And I looked over at Herman and said, "And all their other duties is assigned." He said, "Yep," in his Texas accent.
Yeah.
Said, "Yep, let's take this thing down." As only Herman could. He was a character, as was, of course, Raleigh Bristol. You know, all the years we worked with Raleigh at WGH-FM and over here. Raleigh was the most organized hippie I've ever met. When you met Raleigh, and the first time I met him, he had long hair and with his hippie outfit on, and I thought, this guy knows classical music, and as it turned out, he certainly did. He'd studied it in college and was an expert in jazz and classical music, and was extremely organized and meticulous with his timing and that sort of thing, and it was just great fun to work with Raleigh. And, of course, Taylor Green was a hoot to work with. Taylor had been like me. He had started in high school doing radio down in Greensboro, North Carolina, and then he went through East Carolina University and studied with our good friend Jim Reese, the late Jim Reese down there, and came up here and did radio, went to Philadelphia, was the drive time afternoon announcer for WFLN in Philly, and then came back to WHRO-FM and spent his last years here. And was a laugh a minute. Was all I could say. You never knew what Taylor was going to do, but he did it with great style.
He did indeed. As they used to say on Saturday Night Live, wild and crazy guy.
Yeah.
That's Taylor. Let us now go back to the actual launch of the station as it was made official or semi-official in this somewhat chaotic launch back 25 years
well, we had
ago.
all new equipment, so you have to understand everything was brand new.
That's true.
We didn't exactly know exactly where all the switches and buttons were, but we bumbled our way through.
All right, here's how it sounded.
U.S. Naval Observatory Master Clock. At the tone, Eastern Daylight Time, 12 hours, 0 minutes, exactly. Universal...
That's it. It's 12 noon. This is WHRO-FM at 90.3. I'm Dwight Davis.
I'm Vian Webb.
I'm Raymond Jones, and we're ready.
The Consecration of the House Overture by Beethoven. The Consecration of the House Overture by Beethoven, appropriate music for this special day on WHRO-FM at 90.3. Good afternoon, this is Dwight Davis with Taylor Green and Raymond Jones.
It is official now, is it
and
not?
The Hanover Band as well. Not yet. This is WHRO-FM Norfolk operating at the assigned frequency of 90.3 megahertz.
WHRO-FM is a non-commercial public radio station licensed to the Hampton Roads Telecommunications Association, Incorporated, Norfolk, Virginia.
WHRO-FM provides 24-hour classical music, concert, and operatic performances.
The studios of WHRO-FM are located at 5200 Hampton Boulevard, Norfolk, with transmission facilities in Driver, Virginia. Welcome aboard.
And on we go with the music.
And that's what it sounded like 25 years and 43 minutes ago.
Wow. Time does fly. I'm just thinking of some of the names of the people who have been here over the years. We mentioned Bob Calvert, a legendary broadcaster. Bob told us that Wolfman Jack had modeled himself after Calvert. We thought, come on, Calvert, you're full of it. And then when Bob had a stroke late in life and they had a dinner for him at Tom's Tiki Tie, who showed up at the door but Wolfman Jack, who admitted that when he was a young announcer in Newport News, he had modeled himself after Calvert's Saturday night program. And, of course, our friend Chuck Adams, Chris Astle, known on the radio as Chuck Adams, who held many shifts on WGHFM and WHRO-FM, and who's sort of like our official historian. He keeps track of everybody on out there on the Internet. Hope Mihalap, our opera expert who once worked for Rudolph Bing at the Met, and Hope, of course, still very much with us. And there's always hope when she's around. She is a character. We'll hear maybe a little bit from her in a bit. Lane Dare, who held many air shifts on the station, great supporter of the station. Tim Morton, who was not only one of our announcers, but a very fine actor and went on to act in New York. Had a nice acting career as well before his death. Bill Hickok, of course, who did the guitar program. Bill passed away from illness a few years back, but wonderful guitar aficionado who brought that knowledge to the air.
And also, Bill brought the program to us.
Yes.
It's not often that people walk in off the street and say, here, I've got a program for you. Give this a try.
I mean, most of the time we go, right.
But Bill had a winner there, and to this day we have a guitar program in that slot on Sunday evenings, thanks to Bill's enthusiasm, which was infectious and caught on with the listeners.
And now we have Edgar Lacine, who's gone to his good reward. Edgar, who was for so many years on the faculty of East Carolina University and moved to Norfolk, and Lacine at Large was one of our reviewing programs, and it was fun to have Edgar go around to concerts and tell us about it. And John Dixon, who was now head of the Academy of Music, John with his British accent holding down the fort for a while, doing some programs. And, of course, Betty Luce. Couldn't do a program about the station without talking about Betty Luce. Betty, who produced Hearsay on our sister station and who was behind the scenes with great classical music. She was a very fine musician and just was a right hand for Vianne for so many years. We really miss Betty and her formidable knowledge of music and all things. She was a great intellect. And I've got to give a shout out also to our current boss, who started off as my secretary many years ago, and that was Heather Mazzoni. It still is Heather Mazzoni, and Heather is now in charge of all radio and television and is the boss for me and
she
Dwight.
Keeps us in line.
And does a splendid job. And I've had a lot of proteges over the years that I've gotten into broadcasting and who've done a great job, but she's my star protege. So, Heather, if you're listening, you're part of the gang here. You weren't around 25 years ago. You would have been a child back then, but now very much a part of our broadcasting family here.
Indeed.
And we thank, of course, Bert Schmidt, our big boss, the president and CEO, who's such a great supporter of classical music. And Bert, we appreciate that helping hand that you always give us from down in the executive quarters to keep great music on the air. So many names over the years, so many memories, so many funny stories, the stuff that's gone on here in the state. Times when we've been snowed in and had to live out of the snack machine and keep music going. And, of course, the change in technology. Ray Lenz is our current radio engineer, and he keeps us going with all sorts of new things like our Rivendell automation system. When I started in radio, we were still playing 78s mixed with LP, so then we go that far back. And then we got into the compact discs and then the mini discs and then the digital audio tape from reel-to-reel tape. Nothing like old reel-to-reel tape. You'd have to splice one section to the other in these tiny little pieces of tape. And more than once, somebody's flung the door open right in the middle of a splicing session, only to see the little pieces of tape flutter away into the air, followed by perhaps some ungentlemanly language. But such was the case with broadcasting. And now everything is in the computer. We play our music out of little buttons on the screen. But it's still the same music.
It's still
Mozart, still Beethoven.
That's the key.
And we go back and we play the great old musicians as well as the modern musicians. I've been doing some of the historic recordings of Sergiu Celibidache, for example, on this just in, the new releases program. doing some archival recordings he made, and yet we've got the very latest artists. We'd run the Virginia Symphony, of course, and the Virginia Opera. My voice sounds a little weary today. I was doing the morning program on WHRV this morning, sitting in for Sandra, then jumped in the production room and produced the Virginia Opera broadcast of La Traviata.
For Wednesday night.
Be on Wednesday night and then on the program here. So we stay busy. If you could look here behind the scenes, we're always running around. And, of course, we're back in the music library. If you could see that library, and a lot of people have, it is the, I guess, the core of what we are. We have one of the finest collections of music in the country, and we're constantly adding to that. And all throughout the day, you can wander back in the library. You'll see Sherry going up and down the stacks looking for new things, for a little something for everybody, or Anthony loading in the latest music for his afternoon delights. Anthony McSpadden, who was a wonderful addition to our staff, and he was the drive time morning announcer in Dallas, Texas, and then on a worldwide radio network, WorldSpace, out of Washington before coming here. Sherry came to us from Buffalo, and we just have enjoyed now having announcers who are not homegrown. Dwight and I are pretty much homegrown. Yeah. We're locals.
But as I like to boast, wherever they come from, best classical staff in the country.
Yeah, I think so.
Bar none.
We'll put ourselves up against anybody, and we've done that for a lot of years. And we're going to keep doing that thanks to you. But today we're reminiscing. We're going time tripping into the past. Wouldn't it be wonderful, Dwight, to just jump back 25 years to see everybody again?
Yeah.
And sit in the studio, which is new furniture, new equipment. The only thing that I think was here at the time was the covering on the walls and maybe the old speakers.
I think that little bust of Beethoven was here.
Yeah, the bust of Beethoven was in here, and then so the past and the present and the future all run along. What will the next 25 years be like? It's hard to imagine the equipment, and I guess people will be running music by mental telepathy.
Yeah, we'll do this 25 years from now, Ray.
Yeah, we'll
see what.
If we can figure out how to operate the equipment. Dwight and I are both the staff Luddites when it comes to computers, and everybody kind of helps us along.
Yeah, the launch 25 years ago incorporated several pieces of music. We heard the consecration of the house, appropriately so, for the beginning of the station. And this piece was also on that segment. You didn't hear it before. You're going to hear it now. Just a piece of music that will sweep you away as we were swept away a quarter of a century ago. That, folks, is why we're in this business. That and, well, Mozart's music and Bach's and Beethoven's and Dvorak's and a couple of hundred other friends that you have supported over the years on this public radio station.
We never get tired of it, and we even added some stations. We might mention, speaking of dates and times, it was in the year 2011 at 4:14 in the afternoon. WHRJ signed on at Gloucester Courthouse, 89.9, so we could get that signal a little further up north. And over on the eastern shore, we had a lot of demand as well for a better signal over there. So in the year 2012 at 1 p.m., September 4th, this very month, WHRF signed on, 98.3 licensed to Belhaven. So we've expanded the signal over the years. We used to be just a single signal. Of course, now we're also streaming on the Internet. That wasn't around 25 years ago, at least not to put a radio signal on. But now we hear from people around the world when we have our membership drives. It's nothing to get a pledge in from Switzerland or California or any place around the globe now. So that people who have lived here and who want to keep the station with them, as we say during the pledge drives, have been able to take it with them anywhere they go. And of course, being a Navy town, we've had a lot of people who have been transferred off to distant ports and different assignments. And so now we are a worldwide type service, which is kind of fun to know after all those years that people all around the planet can listen to WHRO-FM. And, of course, we're going to keep doing that, as we have for the last 25 years. And I think we've got one bit of music left. Let me tell the story of the Radetzky March. It was Vian Webb's favorite. And so every year on Vian's birthday, we play the Radetzky March. I know that Dave very well. It is 6/17. 6/17 happens to be my wedding anniversary. Vian got me and my wife Joan together and was the maid of honor at our wedding. So every year when we have our anniversary celebration, it's also Vian's birthday, and we play the Radetzky March in her honor. So in honor of everybody who's been here for 25 years, and Vian and Bill and Chuck and Taylor and Raleigh and Herman and Betty and Hope and all the bunch. For me, Raymond Jones, for Dwight Davis, who is sitting at the controls as he was 25 years ago. We thank you for allowing us to have 25 years of fun. We've got to leave the clubhouse here shortly and let the girls back in, so Sherry's going to come back in to the rest of her program today, as she does every day so well. And we've had fun having an hour. We thank her for letting us have this hour, and we hope you've enjoyed in sharing it with us. So I think it's time to say farewell. And we'll be back 25 years, do it all over again.
We will indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the great music. We'll keep it coming. And another 25 years, I think we can do it. The Radetzky March, as Raymond said, a favorite of Vian Webb. She always said that she wanted that played at her funeral, and she was not joking. It's 1 o'clock. This is WHRO-FM Digital Norfolk, WHRJ Digital Gloucester Courthouse, WHRF Digital Bellhaven. Classical music 24 hours a day with your generous membership support. We move on now as we hear the Flute Concerto in G major by